everybody. Thanks for joining. VP Media Pro Podcast takes a holistic approach to encouraging and educating aspiring entrepreneurs on the life cycle of business ownership. Listeners will hear open discussion from business experts and community leaders on different business success topics that range from leadership, mindset, trends, business planning, work life balance, money, marketing, and so much more. Today's episode is how to create the right mindset for business and wealth. I have the pleasure of introducing a visionary and financial mentor who was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. His goals are to provide tools to help business owners and entrepreneurs to invest and manage their money. And he does this through his companies, Network Marketing Group and Get Smart University. I want to introduce and welcome to VP Media Pro, my dear friend and money expert, Joseph Fountain. Hey, Joe.
Hey, what's going on, Monet? Can I call you Monet? I know you said your government name. Is it all right if I call you Monet?
Sure.
Right.
For those of you who don't know, Monet is my middle name. And so that was the name that I introduced myself to Joe when we first met years ago. So sure, you can call me Monet, Joe.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for having me on. I definitely appreciate it.
Yes, thank you definitely for taking the time out of your schedule to talk to us about money and mindset. So as we're going into today, tell us a little bit more about you. Like before you became an entrepreneur, what was it that you did?
Well, I grew up in Richmond. I grew up in Highland Park, Richmond. But basically, like far as work-wise, before I was in entrepreneurship, and I actually worked as engineer, worked for an engineering company, was a structural engineering company. So a lot of different buildings, a lot of people frequent, shopping areas, stuff like that. I helped with the structural design of that, building, which basically is in a sense like what keeps the building together, what holds it up. As well as in a sense, I've always kind of been an entrepreneur because I also was partnered in a landscaping business at one point during that time. I've always had my hand in some type of business, but career-wise, I worked as a structural engineer for many years.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Like how did you begin Net Worth Marketing Group? How did you start that? What led to that?
So we go back to the job, right? So back in like 08, 09, when the recession hit, one of the areas that was really hit hard was the engineering sector. So I've been working in my business, my company for a while. So of course I had an X on my back and I ended up getting laid off. I actually got laid off when me and my wife had just purchased our first house. We were probably in the house, I want to say a little under a year, maybe like 11 months or so. And then we had our first child like a month after I got laid off. That kind of pushed me into it because during that time, you didn't really have any way to, like nowadays you have so many different, ways to just roll into different side hustles, things like that. Back then, there wasn't a lot of options, especially through internet and through mobile devices and things like that. So, found myself trying to look for jobs, apply for hundreds and hundreds of jobs. At the same time, I had kind of got involved in network marketing and, through time, of just struggling through it and then learning how to build it and building a team, as well as just learning more about online entrepreneurship and different things like that, and doing drop shipping and all these different things. When you start to learn how to build a business online, I started getting pretty good at being able to build my network marketing business online. And so because I couldn't just buy everything, and so I would do stuff myself, like create websites, create my own strategies, create my own graphics, and people would start asking about that. And what would happen was people, of course, they always ask for the easiest thing first. They would ask for graphics. So for a moment, I did graphics. But what the problem was that people, they would ask for this stuff. They never had any plan or knew how to get traffic or knew how to build to get people to these events and all this other stuff. And so that's where I kind of really started building my business as outside of my network marketing company to say, you don't just need a website and just need a flyer. You need to know how to build your business. And then those things kind of fell to the back and just kind of been doing more strategy. So that's kind of how I ended up in business, basically being laid off, left to fend for myself and my family. So, and ever since I've just been, 100% 1099 since 2009. So, yeah.
Wow. So you pretty much survived two or went through two different historical events, the 2008 recession and the pandemic of last year.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit more about that, how you were able to overcome the pandemic and still operate and run your business.
One of the fortunate things, now, none of us could foresee a pandemic happening. However, when certain things happen, there are certain areas that will do better and that will grow. And then there's certain areas that will die off. Because
Mhm.
my business is essentially, even though it's strategy and anyone you can strategic plans, doing these different things, whatnot with different businesses or whatever. But either way, it still kind of ties back to a lot of like online, a lot of digital marketing and stuff like that. Well, in a pandemic, well, what do people need more of? Because now people can no longer, or well, at one point, people weren't more so like, you know, like just so I need, I just need people coming into my building. But now it's more so like I need to learn how can I still survive through this?
Mhm.
How can I build my church through a pandemic? How can I
Right.
build my business? How can I start products around my cooking business online and figure out a way to generate income because people ain't really trying to necessarily buy dinners from me anymore. Like
Exactly.
anything you can think of. And so because of that, the stuff that I'm well versed in, I understand, I know, how you can do this, how you can do that, whatever the case is. Helped a lot of people do it. So then, because of that, you kind of get more and more attention, and people flood to you just based off of referrals and knowing what's happening. So my business was just positioned in the right place. All of my businesses were just in a sense because it's online, even to
Yeah.
like the finance stuff with YouTube. Like YouTube, just the amount of traffic is crazy. So if you have the right things set up, it can generate, income for you. And just understanding like what time you're in. And you can, set things straight, as well as even going back to like business, not having a large overhead expenses, as well as even just over the years of, taking care of finances and, getting out of debt. Me and my wife, we don't have much debt. Like whereas by the time the pandemic came, I mean, outside of our mortgage, we got like a little bit left on school loans, but there's
Yeah.
nothing pulling at us. So let's say if we had to live off of less money, it's not a problem because we don't have much pulling at us. So it's kind of like a conglomerate of just different things. But because of just how the way the things have in the pandemic, it just benefits my business because of where things are going. That's where my businesses are positioned at.
Yeah, and that's where the money resides.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Right. So, what is the backstory about you and money? Like, what made you interested in learning about money?
I have a wide range, like a lot of people do, right? I'm not the only person, but
Right.
growing up in the hood, struggling, not knowing the right ways to make money, like
Hmm.
thinking maybe it's sports or maybe it's the hustle life, or not really understanding and then struggling. But one of the things with the struggle was I just kind of growing up, I really, really want to know like how can we not struggle? And
Right.
my mom, even though she may not have had a lot at the time, she had no problem trying to expose me, or my sister, for example. And I remember one time she took us during Christmas to see this big house out, in the West End. And she had took us to like Walmart. She was like, "Well, y'all can buy one thing, but I can't really get you anything else for Christmas." I would find a way to make money to help out, and that's what I would do. But she had took us to see lights, and I remember her taking us to the neighborhood to see these big homes. Right, when you're in the hood, you see that stuff on TV, but in person, it's kind of like, wow, like somebody live here. Like
Right.
as an adult, seeing is not as drastic, but like you're just like, wow, somebody live in these neighborhoods, and then you're like, oh wow. So for me, the wow factor just because of the exposure just triggered me into just even more wanting to know how do you not be broke. And importantly, like far as a black man, like how's a black man succeed in society?
Mhm.
Because then growing up, being a teenager, even into like my early 20s, like, well, dang, like I'm doing all I can, but like it seemed like it's just hard to get around it. And the more you go down that I don't want to say rabbit hole, but down that path of trying to figure out, it's going to lead you somewhere. And so for me,
Right.
it led me to asking people who were successful that I may meet questions, or places I worked, asking the managers questions, like the if I had a chance to talk to the VP or whoever, and ultimately to the library. And I hate reading, and I would go to the library and read on books and stuff that I didn't care to read, and then sitting and turning to CNBC and just listening. I don't know what they're saying, but just I would obsess
Right.
over trying to figure out this world that seemingly was a little hidden from us
Absolutely. And it was, like you said, seemingly hitting. It was hiding in plain sight.
in plain
And
sight. Hmm.
that was something that worked for me too. Like I went to the library, and that's how I learned about business. And I've learned about, how to develop a business and things like that. So when you were in the library, what were some of the things that you've learned when it comes to money? What was something that was like, oh, okay.
I would just find random books. I'd search like the titles. So I would search like business, finance, real estate, ownership, land. I would just search titles and see what came up.
Hmm.
And so things like reading like Credit for Dummies, um, Investing for Dummies, anything. One of the things that struck out to me the most was when I was reading biographies and things like that. And one of the biographies that I read, the first that probably had a huge impact, especially on me learning about the investing and ownership world, was Warren Buffett. At the time he was ranked number one in Forbes, so I read a biography on him to see how he did get to where he was,
Hmm.
and I just started learning that it's a journey, and I started learning that everything isn't as hard as it seems. It's just you don't have the knowledge, So it's like everybody wants to work on their credit. Well, there's so many different easy tricks, and tips to it. Or you want to get out of debt, like, well, pay off the smallest thing first, or pay off the largest thing for like just a little bit. And so like that was one of the things I applied. The first was debt, and I wrote a list of all my debts. Me and my wife had just gotten married, and she can tell you, like, I wrote a list down of all of our debts, and we were staying in an apartment at the time, so we had two nice incomes and an apartment. Like, we can do this, and just pay smallest things off first, like, and
Hmm.
just kept working our way down until. And so, like, just learning that you can do and you can accomplish anything. It's just a lot of times we just don't have the knowledge, because we go based off of like borrowed knowledge, where someone's like, oh, that's too hard, or you can't
Right.
do that, and you can't do this. But then when you learn, it's like when I started investing, most people at the time will say you need thousands of dollars to start investing. Well, my first investment was $30. And I had learned about a brokerage account that you could use and invest $30 in, or $10, or $100, and start investing. And that's what I did. So a lot of times, like, just what I've learned is just it's just that the knowledge is there. You just have to just apply. And that's what really just opened my eyes to saying, like, oh, okay, so I just need to learn more. So I obsessed over learning. So
Yeah. So you seem to have a great relationship with money. Why do you think people, have a bad relationship with money?
I think it comes from different places. It's the way our system in society works. Hate to say it like
Mhm.
that. For example, right now everybody's excited about the stimulus, right? But
Right.
anybody watching this, I advise you to go and research stimulus and research a stimulus plan. If you do the research on it, you'll find out that people, as us, we're not at the top of the list. We're at the bottom of the list. We're like kind of the cattle, like the sheep in the equation. They give you money because they want you to spend it. It's a way to bring money into the economy and boost the economy. It ain't got nothing to do about you paying your bills. They want you to spend money. Now, if you keep people from having access to money, like in a pandemic for a while, that need it, some of the things they're going to do have nothing to do with paying down their bills or paying off bills they've been behind. They finally get a chance to get a break and just spend the money that they've been meaning to spend for the last 6 months or eight
Mhm.
months. So that's one aspect, just the economy. And that's just an example, but But when you get into just the knowledge or understanding what money is and how we what are the simple basic practices of money, our understanding of money, our understanding of using it, like our understanding of what represents wealth, like buying flashy things is what a lot of people like to do when they get their
Right.
hands on money. Not
Hmm.
really understanding, like, a lot of stuff doesn't matter as much, as well as just how we grew up and how and the language we learned from our families and things like that. All those things come together. It puts you in this system to where you're working 40 hours, 60 hours a week to make money, right? And you're making money for the purpose of not necessarily to live better. That's not what people are thinking, but they got bills to pay, right? I got to pay
Right.
these bills. So you make money, and essentially your money just continues to make somebody else rich. But how often do you ever think about how can I take this money and do good for myself and prepare for my future or prepare for my family's future with it? It's just certain things we're just not knowledgeable about because we weren't ever taught to look at it that way. Like I said, when you don't have money, the moment you get a lot of it, the first thing you think about is all the stuff I can spend and I can buy, right?
Right.
And I'm
Hmm.
not saying it's a bad thing, but it becomes a bad thing when that money runs out. For most
Yep.
people in those situations, it runs out. So, it's just the way that we came through with the society, our knowledge, the way we've learned from our families, and just our bad habits and things like that. So it contributes to our relationship as a whole, and it can weigh on us, financially to the point where you can be in a pandemic and you need money and you don't have any ways to gain or you don't have any savings or anything just based off of years of just how we normally have lived, right? Which most people live paycheck to paycheck. That's
Yeah.
just that's the true fact. Most people don't have 6 months saved up. Most people can't do it based on their jobs. Like there's so many aspects that affect us, especially when you get into minorities, like financially, that it just chops and eats away at us. And so the more that you learn, the more that you grow, then the more you can fix those things for yourself. So it's kind of like
Absolutely.
learning and unlearning. Like, yeah, unlearn and relearn. So
Exactly. You do. You really do have to reprogram your mind when it comes to money because it is a different shift in thinking. Most people have scarcity mindset instead of the mindset of abundance. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So it's just kind of like what I was talking about, right?
Mhm.
Scarcity. So scarcity can do so many things. Scarcity can cause you to do the wrong things for money. Um, it can cause you to blow it when you get it. It also can be a mindset in itself where you just operate out of lack all the time, or you don't even believe in yourself, or you just have a lot of fear, right? Just it has so many different layers. Having a mindset, of scarcity can just take away from everything. So like it can even hurt you to the point where when you get into a good place, you don't even realize you're in a good place because you're still stuck at the same, levels, like having a poverty mindset. Things are fine, but you still have a poverty mindset, and that poverty mindset is causing and it is bleeding you dry just because you
Right.
haven't shifted your mindset. One of the biggest changes we have to make in order to do better in just about anything is in our mind. And
Exactly.
and if we can do that, if we can master being better, becoming better, things will can work out better. It's just the discipline to do that. Like, for example, a couple years ago, I just got back into watching sports. I'm a sports fanatic, but for about 10, 11 years, I barely watched sports, Super Bowls. I watched glimpses because I would just use that time to just learn. Like I love learning more, so I would just use that time to learn and grow. And it wasn't until like a couple years ago I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start watching all the games that I want to watch. But for like a good 10,
Right.
11 years, I just missed a lot. Like I hadn't seen a whole Super Bowl since this last one. This was the first one in years that I've sat down and literally watched like majority of the thing. Because I was more so wanting to just fix the errors in my mind that were causing me to not succeed or whatever I want to do. I needed to get that knowledge. So mindset plays a big part in all that stuff. So, you have to tend to that with learning and growing. And sometimes it means substituting what you put in. right? And feed on some other good things. So
Absolutely. Sounds like to me, and I love that it wasn't an overnight action for you. It was something that took time in the making. Yeah, I love that. What kind of mindset does an entrepreneur need to have when it comes to money?
well, you should have a similar mindset like you do personally. I think where it messes people up sometimes is they think that the goal is to make more money. Now, granted, it is, right?
Right. Hmm.
However, if you make $1 million and you spend $1 million, you ain't got no
Ah,
money. I mean, so like,
exactly.
so it is nice to make more money, but you also have to get some due diligence around that when you have a business. And it doesn't make sense to start a business to make more money and then to do what they call lifestyle creep and then to grow your lifestyle and then to be broke again. It's kind of like an athlete who, and granted, there's so many reasons why an athlete could blow money. Like even not being able to make money in college from your name can cause you to, it's so many different things. But you become an athlete, they give you a $10 million signing bonus or $5 million signing bonus. And I've met with um, a few athletes and their girlfriends now, spouses around stuff like this, in the past, and they get the money and it's like bam. So for example, like I won't say a player's name, but there was a player who got to the practice squad of a particular football team, and the practice squad was getting like I think it's like $7,000 or $8,000 a week for just being on the practice squad. Don't play a
Wow.
game. So that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Someone got hurt, he got bumped up as a starter or on the roster. Now he gets the league minimum, which was like $500,000, like $450,000. So that's a big change from, making, about like what's that, about 20 something $1,000 a month to or $30,000 a month in that range to now getting, $450,000 or so a year or whatnot. And it's real easy because as soon as they had to bump up, this is why we were actually meeting together. And so as soon as he had to bump up, his spending got out of control. So it's like you get the money and it's like, oh, turn up. Hey, and
Right.
in your mind, you're like, I'm gonna make some more next year. I'm gonna make some more next year. It doesn't always come like that, especially in sports. But you can have a really good year. So many people have had a really good year last year, and their businesses were totally affected during the pandemic. Wasn't expected. It's been a year. So a lot of times we just have the wrong thoughts around making more money in entrepreneurship. And we think that our sign of success a lot of times is buying more stuff, getting the
Hmm.
bigger house. It ain't nothing wrong with having nice stuff, but sometimes we just think that that is what represents wealth. It was really more so about like, well, it's like the saying goes, not how much you make, but it's about what you do with what you make. So
Hmm.
being able to grow a business, then take care of your things right, then what happens is it makes it better for you, and you're not a broke business owner because you're still working paycheck to paycheck as an entrepreneur. So having those shifts and doing better with your finances as an entrepreneur is extremely important, or
Right.
either you'll be working extremely hard for the rest of your life. And entrepreneurship money is not always the easiest to come past, especially when you start, because you have to kill what you eat, and so you can work hard all day and not make a dime. That's the reality of an entrepreneur. So you
Mhm.
do want to take care of your money a little better as an entrepreneur.
Yes, you do. Because there are business expenses that you have to pay for, and you have a team. Once you get to that point, you have to accommodate that. So a lot of times, I've actually spoken to some startups who used all their money for the lifestyle, where the money acquired needs to go back into the business so that the business can be sustainable for the long term. So your I remember us having a conversation, right? And we talked about your quote, one of your quotes of many quotes that you have. I absolutely love this quote. So the quote is, God's way leads to greatness. Your way will lead to a great mess.
Mhm.
So Can you talk a little bit about that? And what are your top principles about money?
It's really simple, guys. Sometimes God gives us, He puts us in different positions. So I go back to like me being laid off, for example.
Hmm.
I never had any ideas of wanting to start an online business or anything like that. I've always focused on investing. I've always focused on wanting to own real estate, land, stuff like that. But my goal wasn't necessarily to be an online marketer or was in network marketing for like 5 6 years. I had no intentions on none of that stuff to doing YouTube videos and having finance groups. That was not necessarily my particular path. But me being laid off, I see it as a part of, God's plan. It doesn't look like
Hmm.
it at the beginning, but then what happens is, he, like, if we go all the way back to there, go back to now, it's like, well, I thank God, because it's like the way I'm positioned around stuff is like amazing. Like it
Hmm.
feels great to know you can flip a switch, you can move how you want to move, and you can help others. Like it's a lot easier when you're, if I was in the position I was, but I didn't see that. So a lot of times God will put us in different positions. He will also give us different ideas and things he will even tell us to do. And a lot of times we don't care about that stuff, or maybe we're just inadequate and don't believe in ourselves as that person to do that. And so we won't trust his way. So we'll just try to do it our own way. But the problem with our own way is a lot of times our own way is rooted in fear and doubt, rooted in comparison, rooted in just overall just not having the confidence,
Right.
bad character, nasty attitudes. It can be, our ways can be rooted in so much stuff that just leads us to just a whole bowl of mess, right? God's way will really help you to put all those things into play. It's cool to have one thing doing well and everything else. I get it, but it's okay to also be working on everything. Like, yes, be successful in business, but be successful as a husband or a wife, and be successful as a mom or a father. Like, how can you be great in one area? It's just like entrepreneurs who still work their jobs. There's nothing wrong with that. But
Right.
because you and I know in the network marketing terms, like, listen, they tell you like your job ain't no, and it's like, okay, all right, like, it's okay to work and still be in business, because you need consistent money at some
You
point
do.
in your life. So,
Hmm.
but what happens is people will be like growing in their personal business or network marketing, for example, because I know you can identify people learning so much about business and being a better person, and on their job, they're trash. They don't care about it. Well, you can't. That doesn't work as a person. You should be growing in both arenas. Be great wherever
Absolutely.
you are, no matter what you're doing. So God's way will lead you to, just a world of real progress. Like the plan, the path, the things you run through, it helps. And just being obedient and moving, it will give you so much more peace in the long run than if you keep trying to handle stuff and you have all these different internal things. Sometimes you just need to lean to his voice and trust him, and let go of the fear, let go of the doubt, work on those things. Because if you keep doing it your way, it's rooted in so many different issues and so many different things that ultimately doesn't do the best for you. So
Absolutely. I love that you said that everything is basically holistic. Everything is interconnected. You definitely want to be balanced in areas, and you don't want to give too much of yourself into one area. Otherwise, that will throw your equilibrium off. I love that you mentioned that, because that is literally one of my favorite quotes that you mentioned. Like I said, amongst the other ones that you have, it's like, yes, we definitely got to talk about that when it comes to building wealth and having the right kind of mindset when it comes to money, because money is a tool. Money literally is a tool to, to help us to propel forward, to pay for bills, for us to be the best business owner, entrepreneur that we could possibly be for our customers. So it's literally as a tool, like you mentioned, it's nothing to be afraid of. And we really want to make sure that we manage money a lot better and have the right kind of mindset when it comes to our money. And so, with that being said, let's talk about savings and investments. What are your thoughts on savings and investment? Should you focus more so on saving, or should you focus more on investment, or both?
Right. So I don't think it's really an either or. I think
Okay.
sometimes the either or may depend on what you need, right? So for example, people say, should I get out of debt or should I invest? Well,
Hmm.
how much is it going to take you to get out of debt? Now I know there's programs out there to tell you don't invest until you get out of debt. Well, that's just not the reality for most people. If you don't make the type of money where you can get out of debt in a year or two, like most people die without getting out of debt. So let's say so if you're trying to get out of debt and then invest, it might be another 20 years before you invest. It just depends on the person. But you can always set things up according to how you need it and who you are. Let's say if you're looking to maybe buy a house, right? So looking to buy a house, then during that process, in that time period, you're trying to buy a house, you might be more inclined to save more money at that time than you invest money. It doesn't mean you don't have to invest. It just means that, you may save, say like if you had $100, for example, like I'm using this as a scope, that means maybe 80 of those dollars goes to the savings and then maybe 20 goes to investing, right? Oh, so now you got your house. So you get all the saving you needed for your down payments and all the other stuff. Great. So then now maybe you flip that. Maybe 50% goes to saving, 50% goes to investing. Just depends on where you are. Yes, there's a statement that says savers are losers. The reason they say that is based off the fact you don't get a lot of interest, or you don't really, your money isn't doing anything when it's saving, right? So it's better to be in a high interest savings account. As of right now, high interest savings account rates are lower in the dirt because of just the rates, the Fed rates, base rates being low. You would want to save in a high interest, but most people are like, oh, well, it doesn't make sense. Well, you still need some cash on hand in case of an emergency, right? Now, it's also good to invest because your money is working. And the way that your money could actually, work for you through compound interest and things like that, or just through overall growth, dividends, etc. It's a lot better than a savings account. And one
Right.
of the things with savings accounts, the issue is a lot of them don't outperform inflation. So basically, your $100 20 years from now will not be worth as much based off of the fact that it hasn't grown as much. So it's just like bread used to be 25 cents, 20, 30 years ago. Well, what if you took that 25 cents and said, I'm going to save this so I can buy bread? And, 30 years from now, 2020 or 2021, well, 2021, you still got the same quarter that you had underneath your bed. It doesn't buy bread. But what if that quarter was invested in something that paid interest or something that grew? Then that quarter could be worth more. So that's kind of like the difference where, savings doesn't keep up with inflation. That's kind of where that whole thing comes from versus investing. You blow past that. Inflation's around like 2% or whatever. So like you blow past that in investing, but you do need cash on hand. So it's really just being able to monitor, where you are in your life at this time, and you set some money aside for savings because you're going to need cash at some point, or just in case you need cash at some point, and then you invest some money as well. It doesn't have to be either or. It's better to kind of build a system of being able to do both, just based off of what you need, like the example I gave. So,
Yeah, that was an excellent example, actually, because by that example, you mentioned 20, 30 years. That's literally a generation. And
mhm,
so imagine, what people who take advantage and understand generational wealth, who take advantage of, okay, investing now because 20, 30 years from now, you know, we can enjoy my family, my grandchildren, my children, can
mhm.
take advantage of the decision that I made today. They will reap the benefits from it 20, 30 years from now. So, with that being said, congratulations on the birth of your baby boy.
Thank
That's
you.
exciting.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
So, tell me, Joe, what are your thoughts on generational wealth?
It's everything. It's
Mhm,
everything. I mean, it's good to be concerned about yourself, and that's
mhm,
cool. But like we talked about, like not knowing, for example, like certain things growing up financially. Well,
Hmm.
it's important to teach your family, teach your kids. So here's the thing. I know we are critical over the school system about how, well, the school system doesn't teach us finances. Well, if we were to get into kind of a race thing, right? For example, well, they ain't teaching you, they ain't teaching nobody. But there are different reasons why, you can see another race a little further ahead than one. Well, the thing is, though, what happens is a lot of things happen internally through networks, through families, through conversations, passing things down, passing it from having those conversations, right? So, what are the conversations that happen in your house versus the next person's house? So,
Hmm.
if finances is tough, right, the conversation around money are more so condescending. Money doesn't grow on trees. It doesn't. But it's normally stated like that as as a more condescending thing. Or you gotta be careful about that stock market. Or I don't know about this. Or you can't do
Hmm.
that. Or what you think of them. Or you got McDonald's money. Now it's funny, but internally it
You
starts to
process.
paint a picture. And as you talk about relationship with money, it starts to build that relationship with money and how we think. Well,
Yep.
what if you show or you're talking differently about money in your household with your kids? Having those conversations, having conversations like me and my brother, well, soon to be brother-in-law, my sister's fiance. Um, we had a conversation once at my dinner table, and my oldest son was there, and our conversation was talking nothing about, because he likes to invest too, right? So we're talking about investments. We're talking about real estate. We're talking about land. Like, well, let me show you where found this at. Let me, like, oh, did you see what happened with such and such? Like, oh, have you heard about this company investing in? My oldest is sitting in the middle at the table. And the whole time we're talking, he's in tune. Kids be in the conversation. He's in the middle of the conversation. So he's hearing these things regularly. So as he's growing up and getting older, then guess what? He won't be afraid of it. He'll be exposed to it, right? The reason
Right.
why a lot of people don't invest is they never were exposed to it. They don't understand it. I don't know what that is. It's like I tell people about even cryptocurrencies. Like, well, whether you like it or not, it's going to be around. So just learn about it, right? Just expose yourself to the information so you're not, shortchanged when you found you may need it. You don't know. You'd rather have the information and not need it than to need it and then don't have information. So like around with my kids, like sometimes around Christmas when people and family would ask what they want, we say nothing, but here's their wish list for stocks that you can invest in for them. So one of the companies I use for them, you can um, create a wish list. I let them pick out the companies because they're on there. It has pictures of stuff that they're familiar with. So of course they pick out Disney, Apple. My youngest picking out like he saw the red dog and was like, "Oh, I seen that show. I want that." Right? Well, it's a company that owns it. So like they're investing in stuff that they understand. I let them pick it out, right? And so just the conversations around that, even about you have a business, okay, cool. You have an idea, okay, cool. Well, let's sell it. Or like my wife's her business, like my daughter helping her in her business and standing around watching mommy,
Hmm.
but not making it so that we're like stressed, and oh, we just got like not doing that because those things translate different to kids. So generational wealth is important, and not only with you teaching them, but also with you building. You do want to be able to leave your family something behind, because either if you don't leave back anything behind, then a lot of times you may leave, a headache, right? That they got to try to figure out stuff.
Exactly.
And
That's
so
true.
and helping them helps them to face a world that we don't know what they're going to face in 20, 30 years as they're adults, right? We can give them a leg up just like anybody else give their kids a leg up. Here's my last example. So I want to ramble on about generational wealth. We can talk all day. Last example. So me and my wife went and bought our first house like 13 years ago. We sat down with one mortgage banker, right? And she's telling us how much we're approved for. And we're like, okay, cool. All right, like, all right, well praise God. We about to walk on and get this house. But then she goes, and how much you guys be putting down? 20%, 30%. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, you guys, you have to put down like 20, 30%. Now, this is for a conventional loan, right? Not to get into real estate differences. There's other loans that you can get that you don't have to put up a lot of money like that. But she was talking about this regular conventional loan. And I'm like, I don't got the type of money sitting around like to just give nobody. Like, what are you talking about? So you talking about like 60, 70, $80,000 as a down payment? Man, if I had that type of cash right now, like, like what are you
Right.
talking about? So she's like, well, don't you have some family or something that maybe can give it to you or something like that? And the whole conversation is dawning on me like, people do that. Wedding gifts are like down payments on houses and all these different things. And I'm thinking like, ain't nobody in my money got that, not legally. Like what you so
legally.
right. So I'm thinking like, well dang. So wouldn't it be nice as a parent to be able to say to your child, like, hey, for your wedding gift, we'll take care of your down payment, or stuff like that. Or, whenever you guys want to buy a house or have it in an account now where you're consistently investing in growing interest. And by the time they get 18, 19, 20, whatever, you say, here you go. And that can be a down payment on a house. Or it could be cash. It could be cash to buy the whole house. That's not far-fetched. That's what people do. It's just that some of us, we don't know that, right? Especially minority. We don't understand that. So they come to you and say, hey, you need to put $100,000 down on this house. You're like, you mean now? Like, nah, this doesn't work. Like, I mean, is the house going to be free? No, it's just down payment. So generational wealth in the conversation is extremely important because there's so many different aspects of life that we can prepare our kids for. It's so much. Even having life insurance, like all those different things play a huge part into it.
Yeah, you mentioned before about dividends. So obviously, you have your hands in stocks and investments and things like that. And even your children, you've positioned them to have their hands in stocks and investment. Can you explain what is dividends?
Yeah. So the easy way to say it is dividends is like profit sharing in a sense. So basically, what the company does is out of their yield or their profit, they will pay you a certain percentage based off of how much of a share or how many shares you have. So, like I said, it's just like profit sharing. So if you own one share or a stock, or even if you own just a piece of a stock, like if you're doing fractional investing, you don't just own a stock, you actually own a part of a business. That is really what it is. You now own a piece of a business to the point where when it's time for them to make certain decisions where they need votes, they send you an email. Hey, would you like to vote on this? Most people don't care about that stuff, but you essentially are a owner at that part. It might be 0.0000001%, like it's not even on the grid, but you own a piece of the company. And so when you own a piece of the company, and if the company does pay out a dividend, which is, like I said, it's basically like profit sharing, then you will get a percentage of whatever that is based off of how much you owe. So let's say, for example, a real simple one, AT&T shares are like around $30 a share right now, and they pay out a 50-cent dividend. So for every share that you own, they pay out 50 cents. So if you got one, depending on how many times a year they pay, for them, they paid out three times or 4 times a year, 3 times a year. So you get 50 cents like every 3 months. All right. So that's kind of what dividend is, like profit sharing. So if you owned a company, a corporate company, and what companies do is profit share. So based off of the ownership, they give bonuses. And they give you percentages of this and dividends for this. So it's the same thing. This is profit sharing. So you get paid for owning, a piece of the company. Might not be a lot if it's one share, but you get paid from owning a piece of a company.
Yeah, well, that's definitely more than the yield of the bank. Like you mentioned earlier, if you were to put that into the bank and into a savings, that would probably take you 2 or 3 years just to get 50 cents, depending
Man,
upon
it
the
take you
amount.
longer than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
10, 15 years, get 50 cents out of 20 some dollars.
Wow. And that's in through your savings, just going through the
Right.
bank where you can just invest it into a stock. Do you have any investment apps for beginners
Yeah.
that you recommend?
There's a lot that you can use. There's companies called, well, all of the companies now have apps. So you have a company called SoFi, which is real easy, simple to use. You have a company called Webull, which is simply easy. Well, let me back up. So SoFi allows you to do fractional shares, for example, no fees. You have Webull, no fees, but no fractional shares. You have Charles Schwab. They have some limited fractional shares, good big company. You have Fidelity, fractional shares, big company. You have TD Ameritrade, big company. They do fractional shares too. I'm sorry, not TD Ameritrade, but Fidelity does. You have Stockpile. That's one of the companies I use for my kids just because of the wish list thing, where you can invest money into my kids' portfolio by just putting whatever else go through their wish list. You have M1 Finance. M1 Finance is a really good one because that is where you can kind of set up a portfolio, right? It's like a pie. It's almost like you're building your own like 401k or fund, right? So, and you build it with whatever stocks you want. And that means you can put whatever money you want to put into it. It starts with $100 to open an account, but you can invest anything and it will distribute your money based off of however you wanted to break down amongst the stocks that you own. That's really good for dividend investing, that particular company. You have Acorn, which is really good. Also, you have Stash, you have Cash App. Right on your Cash App,
Yep.
you can invest $1 through your Cash App. Not
Right.
through cashing app to somebody else. I know there's a scam out there for that, but just through
Okay.
Cash App itself, you can actually invest $1, $10, whatever. Pretty good platform. And that's just a few to name, but it's a lot of good ones out there.
Yeah, thank you for this list of investing apps for beginners. You talked about 401k. So the listeners here, some of them are actually transitioning from a full-time employee to a full-time entrepreneur, full-time startup. Is 401k a part of wealth building? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if you work now, you can have like a self-employed 401k. Things have different tax advantages, but then you can open up an IRA, which is an individual retirement account. And there's a Roth IRA, or not a Roth one, and you can, open up just a regular investing portfolio. For example, like say M1 Finance, for example. So just so you know, like a 401k is basically made up of different funds, but funds, bonds, and stocks. That's what it boils down to. You can create that yourself, whether it's having your own self-employed 401k or IRA, or just your own brokerage, or investment portfolio, whatever. But let's say if you're working a job and you have a 401k. Now, the reason is around retirement, right? So for most people outside of a job, they typically have an IRA, which is, good for retirement as well. Like I said, you can do anything you want. But so a 401k, I think if you're at a job and it has a 401k and they're giving you a percentage, right? They're giving you free money. Take the free money. Now, the thing is, you can always go on your portfolio, no matter who you have, and allocate your funds. Most people don't know that. You can go in there and you can change things around to where your money goes into different, especially when you're going through like a pandemic or recession. You would probably want to allocate because nobody's looking over your stuff. Nobody manages your stuff. The money just goes in there. The people get paid. They don't care. So, but one of the things with 401k, let's say your job has a 5% match. Well, you don't want to put more than 5% in. So what happens is if you do a 5% match, that means 5% out of your paycheck is going to savings for the future. They're going to give you another 5%. So that basically means out of your total salary, you save 5%. But because they match 5%, it's like you just doubled your money for free. And that's part of their profit sharing when they give that extra. So basically, instead of you actually saving 5% towards your retirement, you're saving 10. I know a lot of people are negative about it, but if you have a 401k, I mean, use it. Like, be smart about it and get that free money that they're giving you. But in the same instance, you'd always still invest in things like that, on your own. So it's good, and it can help you accumulate a lot of money, especially if you're working a job for a long time. It's just more so being diligent and watching over your 401k. But I think it's fine to have a 401k. It's just about how you do it. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you talked about your or favorable wealth building tools, which would be real estate, stocks, investments, saving just a little bit. Is there another way that someone would be able to build wealth?
Yeah, I mean, just building business overall. Like, see, it's about what you do with the money.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you have a business and you're making a lot of money. It's about what you do with it. So you have your business, you're making money, then that money can be invested. It can be invested in the real estate stocks. You can buy land. You can buy your own home and investments in that, whatever you choose to do. Those are like kind of like the main things, for example. But, also investing some money back into your business. One of the most valuable investments a lot of people miss is investing within themselves. You can also invest in yourself. Now, what is it? It can be growing your mind. It can be working on your health, your body. It can maybe be mental. Maybe you need to talk with somebody, like not to just vent, but to actually make progress, right?
Right.
But investing in knowledge, investing in anything that can help you grow as a person, or help you become better in growing your money, or help you become better in real estate and better in your business, better as a person. Maybe it's an investment to help you become better as a father, or maybe it's an investment to help you become better as a mom or a husband or a wife. But making investments in yourself also can contribute to that, like, because the person also has to be good too in order to really run this race like at its best capacity. And so making a lot of money and not being healthy, as you know, right? I mean, that's kind of like
Right.
Russian roulette. So there's nothing wrong with making a lot of money and taking care of your health, maybe taking some time off and relaxing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oftentimes people say or think that you should get the money first, and then by getting the money, that will be the answer to everything else. So I will
Always the
have
case.
exactly. It's the other way around. Money is a byproduct. It's what you're saying. Money is a byproduct of good health, good spirit, good mind, good body, good everything. Because once you are well in that area, then your approach to money will be a byproduct of it.
Right.
I love that. I love that. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are listening, the quote again is God's way leads to greatness, but your way will lead to a great mess. I'm telling you. So, Joe, as we come to a close, and I want to thank you so much because the tools that you always provide, every time I'm in your presence, you always drop tons of gold nuggets, and you also provide awesome tools with Net Worth Marketing Group and Get Smart University. Outside of coaching entrepreneurs and small business owners to be their highest and best self financially and just well rounded, what are some other things that you enjoy doing?
Oh man, it's a lot. I like just chilling. I love peace. Like,
Right.
no, like it's like it's funny. Like, I love nature. I love getting out in nature, running, walking, being out in nature. I love just like the thing. Like, for example, like, it's not so much the travel for me. It's more
Mhm.
so the peace and the experience.
Ah, yeah.
I love playing sports. Like, I love playing basketball and soccer. I'm getting older, but we still out there on the court a little bit. Not we in a pandemic, not out there with nobody right now, but we still get out there though. I love like doing things with my hands, doing work around the house. Sometimes my neighbors like, why don't you hire somebody? I'm like, no, I want to do it. Like, no, I
Right.
really was an engineer, so I like doing some work for
Building
myself,
things.
working in my yard, spending time with kids, teaching them, like being family. I essentially I try to put more of that into my schedule than I do, business stuff. Like, yes, it's great to build business, but there are ways to kind of still live your life at the same time. And so I'm more apt to trying to make sure that I'm still being able to just enjoy life as a whole. And I love to eat good food. I love to dance, love to laugh. So I try to make investments in those quite often. So
Now, I can't help to ask: is that something that a startup can obtain at the beginning of their journey, or is this something that they will have to go through the struggle initially to obtain eventually?
yeah, I mean, whatever their goal is, as you start up a business, like, I mean, understand it's a journey, right? So it's a journey. So don't get so caught up in trying to make everything happen overnight. Um, you're gonna have some learning experiences. The reason why certain things I know is because I was faced with issues and I didn't know how to get through it. So it's like, so people can call me for stuff because I know how to get through it. Well, the reason I know I get through it is I was faced with it, and there was no, it may not have been nobody to help me or no tutorials online, whatever. But when you face those things in business, is important. So just kind of understand it's a journey, and you're going to learn, and there's no reason to stress, panic. You're gonna go through a lot, but just kind of understanding as you're starting your business that, yeah, it's gonna be challenging. It's not gonna be like a cakewalk all the time. It's going to be
Right.
challenging, but just understanding that there's no reason to feel like you need to be at this point overnight. Take your time, build carefully, be responsible, understand what you're doing, because like I said, after time, especially if you're dealing with people are going to really work your nerves with building a business. You're going to have great people, and you're going to have people that you just don't mesh with. I'll say it like that. So
Right.
I mean, it's a journey, like,
Mhm.
so a lot of people look to the result. That's what they look to. The goal is not the result. The goal is the journey. The
Mm.
result, lad, the result has this much weight in life. The
Mm.
journey is life. So if you can only be successful around a one particular result, then that it makes the journey hard. So and learn to embrace the process and enjoy the journey, because you're going to be more in the journey than you will be in the actual result. Because once it happens, that's it. And then it's kind of like you still got to use the bathroom, you still got to cut your hair, you still got to eat, you still like you still bleed like everybody else. It's still going to be regular life. And yes, more money, whatever the result is, can make you feel good, but there's still a journey. So learn to embrace and enjoy being grateful in the journey. And that's what makes it well worth it. So
You know what? That is extremely powerful. So thank you so much for that takeaway. Is to look at have long-term thinking at the approach, because we live in a microwavable society, and so reprogramming the mindset to have long-term thinking is really important. So tell us, Joe, how can people contact you?
well, you can contact me on any social media. Underneath Joseph L. Fountain is my name, Joseph Fountain, but with an L in the middle. It's my middle initial. You can find me on most social medias like that, Joseph L. Fountain, as well as josephfountain.com. Also, like on YouTube, like my finance channel is Get Smart University. So between those, you can find me. I do get a lot of messages, but hey, hit me up, leave a comment. You know.
Yes. Well, world listeners, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Joe, for your time. I'm actually sure those who listen learn so much. I've learned so much, as I mentioned to you before. Every time I get in your presence, you just drop so much, so many gold nuggets, and I just have to make sure that I write everything down. But it's always a pleasure being in your presence. So be sure to like and follow the Village Project on social media. We're active on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, so be sure to connect with us. Also, connect with us to catch a recap of today's episode. Leave a comment and let us know your takeaway from today's episode as well. Also, Subscribe to the emailing list at www.villageproject.net to receive notifications on when a new episode posts and so much more. Again, thank you all for listening. Thank you so much, Joe. And
Thank
as
you. Thank you.
always,
It's a
grind
blessing,
hard.
millionaire Monet. Out here
Yes,
helping the people.
yes. And as always, grind hard, self-care harder.
Never feel no